Evening, everybody. It's 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, May 15th. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board, and we're going to stand and do the pledge if you join us. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Randy, please.
Trustee Wiegand.
Present.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattara is here, and Supervisor Duran.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, and a committee member present is Mike Springer from Planning, Recreation, and Roads.
Thanks, Randy. Any public comment? Anybody wish to share anything with the board before we get going in our business? Nobody? Okay, well, you'll have another opportunity later if you change your mind. That means we can skip down to 4 then, because there's no comment. Consent agenda. Tonight consists of approval of the regular meeting minutes of May 1st and work session minutes of May 8th. Bills payable in the amount of $98,734.93. Received committee reports and other reports tonight, including the Rec Committee agenda for May 15th and draft minutes of April 17th. Road Committee approved minutes of April 3rd and draft minutes of May 1st. The April Water Production Report and the April Fire Chief, Fire Marshal's Activity Report, my report, financial statements from April, and a Charter Communications. It's like every month we've got something new from Charter Communications. That's correspondence. Do I hear a second?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then I need approval on the rest of the agenda unless somebody has some changes.
You missed board comment?
Well, board comment in response to public comment.
Okay, all right.
I move to accept the regular agenda as presented.
Or.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Board Education privilege comment. Some staff reports tonight and some not, it looks like. I know assessing is coming. I thought Kirk was going to be here. You know, Randy? Fire department too?
Well, fire department just got paged out.
Oh, I
So
didn't hear.
Rob Cochran was going to be here on behalf of the fire department, and he's riding the ambulance as we speak. And Kirk asked me, he just finished 16 hours of training and asked if he could be excused tonight, and I said yes, rather than go to overtime. So he had nothing really pressing on Public Works. He did ask the question about the DWRF2 discussion on the agenda, and I told him that my understanding was it was probably going to be just about the letter that we had sent. So I told him, go home.
Okay. Okay. And I think Dulcie said she was going to aim for 7.
Yes.
So we might have to work her in because she just had a few things she wanted to tell you about. So we'll put a hold on that and come back to it.
Always go back to it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do suspect that Rob will probably be back. It was a medical call they went on. I suspect he'll be back, and we'll stop back in.
Okay. Attorney report. What have you got to share, Roger?
Well, it's been a fairly busy past couple of weeks and month. As you're aware.
Oh, Roger, can you turn that mic, or it's not on? Just turn it on.
That's what we always wanted to have a lawyer to get into.
Been a fairly busy month. As you're aware, I issued an 11-page opinion on the legal alternatives if a satisfactory resolution can't be reached with the noise and vibration issues with the Board of Light and Power. I issued a 6-page supplemental opinion with regard to an ongoing zoning issue on May 4th, I want to say. And I have reviewed some pending legislation that would affect that would affect assessing, not so much in Marquette Township as in some smaller townships, but would provide for joint assessing districts and so forth. That is, it's not been adopted yet, but it is pending. It's been introduced in the state legislature and could have some fairly far-reaching impacts on especially Upper Peninsula townships and smaller cities and villages. I forwarded some information to the Myers Legal Department in Grand Rapids a few days ago with regard to a water main easement that they're going to need in order to convey the right for Marquette Township to take over a portion of the water system that they installed. Part of the agreement with them is, while there's a private component to it as well, part of what they agreed to put in will expand our public water system, and they need to grant an easement. And we've exchanged information to accomplish that as of just the end of last week. Had multiple consultations with both the township manager and the supervisor on miscellaneous things, some property issues, some personnel issues. Had a couple of consults also with the zoning administrator regarding a non-conforming, two different non-conforming use properties within the township, and also had an inquiry regarding one possible conditional rezoning that, at least in my initial opinion, probably wouldn't be a suitable or a proper topic for conditional rezoning within the township. That is pretty much a summary of things that have crossed my desk since the last meeting.
That's a lot. Thanks. Any questions for Roger? Appreciate it. Update. Recreation Committee presentation, Township Parks Cleanup, May 26th. That's this Saturday. And Mike Springer's got a couple pictures he wants to share.
And Michael, if you need to go, you take that microphone out. So you can,
Thank you.
Yeah.
We can kind of roll this in, right, to the National Trails Day too? Just do it. I mean, there's separate agenda items, but
You bet. Okay. So this is the guy here. Oh, so Mike Springer, I'm here on behalf of the rec committee. And we have our annual cleanup. The board just received an advertisement. And so what you can do now, it doesn't have any magnetic tape on there, but you can take it home and put it on your refrigerator. And I'm sure you got refrigerator magnets, so don't throw it away. Try to get some people to join us Saturday. So this is the document that the board has advertising our cleanup. This is a group picture taken in 2016. Jason McCarthy took this. It's at Trumwood. You can see if the trailer in back there, that's Pete LaRue's trailer. It's got lots of trash in it. Here's last year, same location. Again, that trailer full of trash. This is Trustee LaRue showing Reggie Durant how they used to do it before fossil fuels were invented. And then Todd Caruth, who's one of our rec committee members, he's the gentleman, or he's the person that brings most of the volunteers. Here's some of his volunteers. And his volunteers broke into this game at the Lions Field last year. I don't know what they were doing. There was no equipment, but it looked like fun. So they're fun people to work with. Lots of good food. A lot of Todd's fellowship brings food, as well as we also get a donation from Walmart. I'll mention in a minute. So this is one of my favorite pictures. This kid couldn't be departed from his football, but he certainly wanted to make sure he had got something to eat. And also a picture here. It's nice to see trustees when they come out and visit us out there. If nothing else, come out and have a hot dog. And we want to thank Walmart. We haven't asked them for the food this year, but every year they've supplied it. And we will be visiting Walmart soon to ask for our request. It's over $200 worth of food and supplies. Oops. And also, this is the canopy that was purchased for the rec committee by the Cedar Motor Inn and Lynn and Reggie Durant. And you can see it came in very handy. Covers the tables, keeps us out of the sun or the rain. And that's what to look forward to. Saturday the 26th, 10 a.m. We're going to meet here. We're going to have a brief safety meeting, introduction to local government, rec committee, whoever's here. If there's board members here, I'll introduce you. So that's what's happening on Saturday. Hopefully you will either join us at some point or you'll get the word out so we can get lots of people to help clean up the parks.
Mike, we did mention it to the Business Association today. We had a joint meeting with them. We were talking about how we could partner even on information, you know. And we were talking about the corridor mostly, but we also mentioned about Saturday's cleanup. And so that might be an avenue to try to get some of the businesses or his board, one or the other, connect you two and get more volunteers. They're interested in the
Volunteers are always in short supply.
Yeah, they're interested in the corridor, but, you know, they're willing to kind of help too.
Sounds good. Thanks for passing that on.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to invite a couple of gentlemen up here. Well, I'll get started, but you can, might as well relax. This is about National Trails Day. We've been celebrating National Trails Day in the township since 2007. Originally, this is actually a front page article with our first cleanup. And that's basically what we did the first number of years. The Schwemmen, this was a farm at one time, Schwemmen Farm, and so there was a lot of stuff back in the woods that we removed. And that was just from the original Schwemmen property. Dave Wiegand took a sign that was broken, repaired it, painted it, and installed it. So we've got a attractive sign, and of course Pete LaRusso is running around doing something. Also, we're recognizing, we recognized all the people who had donated money to the purchase of the property that occurred in 2011. We had the Boy Scouts there. They'd wood chips and cleaned up and were there for a celebration of National Trails Day in 2010. And sometimes it was just an information. We'd set up an information booth so people could come by and learn more about the park and what the plans were for the park. Here's a picture of some of the donors or some of the businesses or organizations that contributed to the purchase of the additional property that was necessary for us to have a trailhead on the Iron North Heritage Trail. And here's again Trails Day 2013. Mr. McCarthy pointing out what our plans are for the future. And here's one of our plans that looks like it's definitely in our future, and we're excited about this, because that will even emphasize the importance of the Schwemmwood Trailhead. And this is the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. And we have a map here of the Iron Range Roll. And Mr. Walters here is a board member on 40 Below, and he's also he's in charge of the Iron Range Roll this year and has been last year. So Eric, if you want to.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you for the board for letting me come back. This is our 5th year. Hard to believe we're already 5 years deep into this race. Not really sure where that time goes, but Mike has been on the planning committee since really day one too, and helping us out here, especially trying to highlight the trails for National Trails Day. So he's our resident map maker, does a real nice job for us. The race is 16 miles. It starts at Cliff Shaft Mine Museum in Ishpeming and follows the Heritage Trail down to Marquette Commons. Each year we have about 200 people that complete that race, mostly on bicycles, but we do have a running component starting at M35 and 492. And the rest of the running and the relay, I should say, and the bike start at Cliff Shaft Mine Museum in Ishpeming. Historically, we've been able to raise about anywhere from $2,000 to $4,700 for the Reach and Rise program. This year, we were notified that the Reach and Rise program for Marquette County is being disbanded as of June 11th. So when we were notified of that, we reached out to the Y and kind of found out what other programs we could benefit, which is what Tyler will talk about here in a minute. But we are now going to be benefiting the Y's after-school program at Lake Superior Village. So an equally important program along the way as well. There, 40 Below, who I'm a board member of, is the organization that's putting this on. There's at the beginning of our poster here, which is the 5th annual. There's the full poster with all of our sponsors on this, and we wouldn't obviously be able to do this with all of our sponsors, and certainly without the support of all the municipalities involved. I think we crossed about 5 different municipalities along the way, working with the state police, sheriff's department, pretty much anybody that is involved from Ishpeming to Marquette, we have a presence with at this point. So just wanted to thank the board and the township as a whole for being so supportive of all of us for the years.
Hi, my name's Tyler. This is going to be our first year partnering with the Iron Range Roll with the Lake Superior Village. We're an amazing program, which runs out of the Lake Superior Village Housing Commission in Marquette, Michigan. So we're basically a nonprofit organization that runs from after school every single day and every single day in the summer, and we provide meals, tutoring, homework help, free internet and computer access, free health and fitness access to lower income students in the area who would probably not have those opportunities without the program. And so we're just super excited to partner with the Iron Range Roll and be able to partner up and share the benefits of this. So thank you guys a bunch. I really appreciate it.
Just one last note here. One of the reasons this has been so successful is because it's been a safe event. We've been fortunate we haven't had any major injuries. And one of the reasons it is so safe is that we have a good emergency services department here in the township. And this gentleman on the left here is greatly responsible. Mr. Ron DeMars, Fire Chief, Fire Marshal, is responsible for helping us coordinate those safety efforts over the past 5 years. And I know we're not going to have his services for much longer, so I just want to recognize him and thank this board for supporting this.
Anything for Mike?
You did it very well.
Yeah, great. That was nice, Mike. Thank you.
You can just leave it on, Mike, and put it in the holster. You can just leave that pointer on the ledge there.
Okay, next up is community linkage. Continued discussion of DWRF2 water project, which is a follow-up to May 8th, 2018 work session that we had. And that was on YouTube. Randy downloaded it.
Yeah, it's uploaded, so it's available for anyone to view.
It's a couple-hour discussion about how we feel, what we think, what we can afford. And I asked you all to kind of ponder what we discussed and come back with some ideas, if you want to expound on anything you've said, share with the public, or make a motion, or whatever. It's your pleasure. Don't be shy. Yes, Randy.
Well, I reviewed the video, and there was great discussion on there. And I do, the letter that we put together and sent to the city of Marquette's in the packet, and I thought that was really well done. I think now we just wait and see where our neighbors to the east would either like to go or not go, and go from there, get our options, see where our options are after we get a response from them.
Randy, do you want to comment on the letter? And
Well, the letter basically was directly from the discussion at the work session. The board had indicated that they wanted to communicate directly to the council. So we put the draft letter together and sent it out to board members for review, which resulted in it being sent. But in the interim, while it was being reviewed, I did have a meeting with Manager Angeli to give him a heads up, basically, that a letter was going to be coming, what the intent behind the letter was, so he wouldn't be blindsided, and give him the opportunity to communicate with his leadership. that the request would be coming. We did talk about what some of the benefits might be in both directions, and there are benefits in both directions depending on how it actually works out, I suspect, and did have an indication that he was going to have Mr. Goodman, who is their Public Works Director, be in touch with our Public Works Director. That conversation will likely occur on Thursday. They both have a meeting together in another venue, but Kirk told me this morning that he would probably be chatting with Mr. Goodman at that point on Thursday.
Okay, that sounds good. Anything? Should we just keep going, or? Yes, Dave?
Is there anything?
I wondered why everybody's so
Who is
timid.
lady?
Even Ernie over here, I figured he had something.
I've been trying to find out as much information as I can, and I know I've been a advocate of moving forward with Phase 2, but having looked at the contract and gotten deeper into that, along with questions I've gotten answered from the Superintendent of Public Works and from the manager, I'm beginning to question the whole thing, and the things that come to the forefront is the fact, number one, that the contract, the only thing that ends December 31st of 2026 is the preferential pricing. The contract itself goes on in perpetuity. And one of the big concerns was to secure a water source and supply for the township into the future. And when you consider that the contract goes on in perpetuity, and after December 31st, 2026, the rate increase that the residents are going to see for the average resident using 4,000 gallons is only $2.36 a month is what it's going to affect their bill. When you consider that the rate is reviewed every 3 years, it was just done in 2017, it's due again in 2020, and it's done by a third party. So I don't think there's, not in my mind anyway, any real concern that this rate is going to get carried away and become one-sided. Certainly not, and I understand that whole contract can be challenged by either party in court. And for that respect, I think that if it does end up getting challenged in court sometime after 2026, when the preferential pricing portion expires, I don't see where any challenge is going to give anybody the authority to just turn the water off. I think we have a plan that's been developed since 2004. We have the water available to develop out at Morgan Meadows, and there's no reason, if it becomes an issue of challenging the contract, that we can't implement that plan at that time. And there's no judge in their right mind is going to let them just turn the water off if we have a plan sitting in front of us that we can implement in a given period of time to provide water to our residents. If you can put that portion of it to rest, that we have a sustainable water available to the residents beyond 2026, and then you look at what are the other reasons to move forward with Phase 2. And one of the reasons would be to provide water for the residents that are already along 492. I haven't heard of any residents requesting water along 492, but they've all got established wells. The policy has always been, if we develop Morgan Meadows and put water, a main out to the well field, that nobody has to connect to that water until they sell their property. That's always been the policy in the past, but I'm thinking that would be the policy in the future. So we're really not out there getting anybody to connect unless they want to take advantage of the situation at the time, which there hasn't been any input from any of them to suggest that would be the case. So if you suggest that there's not a lot of outcry out there for municipal water to be supplied to them, then the only other reason can be to foster development out in the area out there. The program has always been developments that require municipal water and/or sewer, contract with the township to put that infrastructure in themselves and then turn it over to the city, or the township. So I'm not sure why we would subject our residents to a $6 million tab to foster development. And by the assessor's documents, we're going to, if we fostered all that development and got 130 more housing developments out there, we would see $65,000 a year in increased tax revenues. If you weigh that against the $6 million expense, it doesn't make sense. That isn't even covering the interest. So I don't really see the reason to move forward and develop, proceed with the development of that plan. I think it should be shelved. I think it should be, I mean, it's there. We've done all the work on it. We own the water rights out of Morgan Meadows. That plan can be put into place if the conditions arise, but if the conditions don't arise, I think we're probably getting the cheapest water we're going to get right where we're at. If you go until 2026, where the rates come up to $2.36 more, we also drop a lot of debt service fees off between now and then. So actually, the residents should see their rates overall should go down unless there's a greater urgency, whether we need to put money away for infrastructure repair and replacement, which is a whole separate issue, and it's not part of this whole consideration, whether we want to put, whether we want to spend the $6 million or not. So I guess I've had my mind changed just by looking through the documents and that, and I'm not sure that I could support proceeding with Phase 2. I think we ought to shelve it. I think we ought to keep it as a document that can be pulled off the shelf and put into practice if issues come that warrant it. But until that happens, I don't see where we need to subject the residents to a $6 million expense.
That was a wonderful synopsis.
Excellent. Is that a motion, Dave?
It could be.
I'll support that if that's a motion.
All right, it's a motion.
Okay.
I support.
Do you want to comment?
How can you comment on what he just said? I mean, that's
Yep.
what I've been thinking all along is this is a lot of money. And we've talked about tabling this many times. Apparently, it was never brought up in a motion during the board meeting. I thought it was. I think it should be tabled. I can't see at this time how we can even proceed or talk about it. So I wholeheartedly agree with what Dave said.
Okay. John?
Part of what our long session was all about was trying to find an answer to the manager's request. Whether he would get direction as to whether or not they should proceed with updating Phase 2. That's a piece of it. So if the feeling now is of the board that the urgency isn't there to go ahead, I think the motion should also include some direction about what to do with updating Phase 2. I mean, they need an answer to that because they're under an obligation to keep it current. But that's a lot of money to do that.
Certainly, in my motion to table that would not be to continuously update it, but to keep it on the shelf so that it can be pulled out and updated if and when we need it.
Okay, so could the motion be clarified to some extent that would give the direction that was sought by the manager?
I just did.
Yeah, just to table the project in any
Shelve it, don't
ensuing.
shelve it.
Well, tabling would obligate continuing update.
Yeah, tabling
Shelve.
is like the wrong
To,
word.
to,
That's right.
Don't table.
to cease, the motion, as trustee Marks brought up, the motion should include that staff will no longer work on this project unless and until the board directs us to.
Thank you.
That
Well, and
sound
I could clarify the motion to say that it'd be my motion to discontinue development of Phase 2 of the water project until such time that the board determines it's necessary.
Thank you.
That would,
would
that
do
would
it.
be better, yeah.
Okay, and you're all right with that,
I
Dan?
agree with that, yes.
Okay, Pete?
I wish Kirk was here. I would like to hear his response to Dave's comment before we vote on it. Just it'd be kind of interesting, because he's been working on this for years. Now, the way Dave explained it, I would like to hear his comment on it, you know. But if you can always bring it up again and open it up again, too. So if you put it on the shelf, you can take it out any time. But I'd be interested in his comments.
Ernie?
I think Dave brought up a good point, and I think a lot of us thought about that, didn't know which way to go in that. I think what we've done with the city is give us some more information that'll come back to us, so we can see what will happen that, and we may have to make a decision on that at some point in time too, when that comes back. But overall, until you get development and people really want to do something out there, then we may be obligated to pull it off the shelf and really do something. It's going to take us 5 or 6 years to go all the way through it and that too. So I know the manager would like to have, moving the direction of water independence and that. As Dave said, the contract or the court order is through the 26th of 2026 and that, so that's setting out there. So we have to make sure we're well aware by 2023, 2024 as to what's going to happen after that too. So, but I think right now, until we get people wanting water and sewer out there, I think it's best for the board to kind of just put it aside and watch what's happening in that.
Roll call.
Well, hang
Got
on.
questions down here.
Yeah, a couple more questions. Randy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, well, in answer to the question about what Kirk's position would be to continue to go forward with the project, and he would be doing that on 3 bases. Number one, that is the recommendation of the DEQ, because the DEQ recognizes that our water system is at risk from our supplier. They've said that here in this meeting at least 3 times, on 3 separate occasions. We had a contract in place, a 40-year contract that was at 20 when we got into court because the city breached the contract. We have a history. Security is the issue for our staff. The security of the township to be able to provide the necessary water for your current requirements as well as your anticipated future requirements, which you do not control. And that's the whole point of this project all the way from 2004 when it was adopted. You have a sole source supplier. The question of whether or not you extend public utilities isn't a question of whether the people that are there now need it or somebody in the future might want it. It's whether you want development in those areas, because development will not occur unless you provide the access to it. This area is a classic example. Nothing would have been built here unless the DDA built the infrastructure. So those are the keys that Kirk would have brought up, and that's the reason staff supports going forward.
Dave?
Just a couple point of clarification on my concerns, and one was from the letter that you got at the last meeting, where there's a surplus capacity of the city right now by some 4.4 million gallons a day. That I don't see their expansion coming anywhere near to using that capacity up, and I don't see our expansion coming anywhere near to using that capacity up when you consider what we're currently using. And the last one was the only development that we could be holding up would be Mason's Bluff, which has been out there forever. And when you look at what we've done in the past and what is set in there for Mason's Bluff to do right now, I would think it would be up to Mason's Bluff developer to make the improvements he needs to develop his property as he wants to develop it. And if that means running infrastructure up from Chapel Ridge and putting the required pumps in at the tune of some $500,000, that certainly would be that would be one way to do it. He could do whatever he wanted to, but I think it's on his bill to provide that development possibility, because certainly this, other than the tax dollars, which I think are minimal, that we're going to realize out of that, there's really not an incentive there to, and I would think the residents would be upset with us if we spent $6 million I know I'd be upset with us if we spent $6 million so that we could develop that further out there. I can understand the manager's need to promote development, but I just think when you consider all the things that have happened over the last few years, the dark store issue and the lost revenues and how tight our budget was this year and how tight it's going to be this coming year, I just think we're to raise everybody's monthly water bill by in the $13 to $15 a month range I think it's a bit of a stretch for the residents.
Yep.
Another thing that comes to play on that is that we do have another source of water coming from the west there. That's possible, in the future if we do have a problem. So, I don't know. I think we have to look at expansion if we want the township to grow in that. I don't know what the water is like up in that end for more and more wells. That I don't know. But by shelving the project, we can always take it off the shelf and start update it and go from there.
Well, and like a few meetings ago, if you might remember, I mentioned that it isn't really the project itself that we have to consider. It's kind of what Randy mentioned. How do we want to structure the township? How do we want it to expand? How do we want to accommodate that? And then the project itself is the result of whatever it is we decide. So if we shelve this, we're saying that we don't want to do any development to the west, at least not right now.
At this time.
And it sounds like it's going to fall to the next board if we put this off of our plate. Not that it couldn't come back next year for whatever reason, but that's what we have to think of the big picture, not just by the project. That's the whole thing, and I was reading through the policy governance again today. That's where we have to continue to focus, is on the big picture. And if maybe that's part of our CIP discussion in the future of how do we see this township developing, growing, changing, adapting to what's happening. That's part of the discussion. Then you get into what do we have to do to have that happen. So Randy and I have talked about this project on and off because our offices are, our desks are right there. And that's why I said Dave did a nice synopsis. That's almost word for word what I kind of came up with. I'm not speaking for Randy, but I agree with you 100%. This needs to be shelved, would be the best word. At least until we find out maybe some more information from the city. If we find that's not going to work, we may have to start talking about this in the next 2 or 3 months. But we have to explore all of our options. We can't just put everything in one basket, I don't think.
And why don't we wait for the voting until after you hear back from the city?
That's up to the
I thought that's
motion
what
makers.
Yeah.
We can always bring it back.
I would just think that by stopping development on a project right now, we're saving budget money that we don't actually have to spend anyway. If something happens, it doesn't matter if it happens 3 years down the road or
3 weeks.
5 years down the road. We can always pull it off the shelf and update it then. And we know we're spending our money for a project that we have decided we want to move forward on. Right now, there's so many different ways to look at this. And I think if the first time this phase 2 came around, back in 2004, and we were getting half the money in a grant, that was a little different. That isn't the case now. It's 100% on the residents, and it's to the tune of some $6 million. That's a lot of money to ask everybody to cough up.
Okay, we have okay.
Talking about going to other communities for your infrastructure or services in that community I lived in Minnesota, we did not have our own water or septic system or sewer systems at all. They all came from another communities miles away in that. It wasn't next door, it was quite a ways away in that. And that's where most of the communities were. They couldn't afford to do it. It was cheaper to go for one big community, and part of it was out of Minneapolis and St. Paul area. That was all piped in one way or another in that. So, as I know, in front of our township hall there, they had to go down 50-some feet down to keep things where it was supposed to be in that. And I couldn't believe it, but that's how deep they had to go down to keep it going in that. So it's not unusual to do that because of they're just plain cost in that. So, and as Dave said, I have to agree with him that I don't think you get into a court's not going to say, shut off water right now. There's too many people and too many lives that concerned within that too, so.
Okay, Dan?
Say, if we lived in a perfect world, it would be nice to, I mean, everybody wants to see future development. But right now, for today, I just think it's the best thing to do is shelf it. Like I said, if we have to bring it up later, we can do that. And I guess at this point, I'll call a question.
Okay, and that's, roll call's been asked too.
So the motion is to discontinue work on DWRF2 water project until such a time that the township board decides to move forward. Is that correct, Dave?
Correct.
Okay, roll call vote is trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Everson,
Yes,
trustee LaRue,
Yes.
trustee Marks,
Yes.
treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
secretary is yes, and supervisor Duran.
Yes,
That motion carries 7-0.
good discussion. And our assessing department's here, we moved you because we were ready to go, and that's okay.
Fire department's here also.
Oh, yes, I saw Rob too.
And I apologize, for some reason, my mind was set that the meeting started at 7 o'clock, so I apologize for that. I just wanted to hand this out to, I apologize, Roger, you didn't get one.
Thank you.
I forget sometimes that you're here. This is just a real quick update to explain what our department's been doing and what we're working forward to be in compliance with State
Thank
Tax
you.
Commission recommended changes. And you will see on here, so the first 2 pages.
Excuse me a second.
Yeah.
Can you introduce yourself for the public?
Oh, yes, I apologize. I'm Dulcie Ranta. I am the assessor for Marquette Township, and I am also the deputy treasurer. And in the audience is our assistant, Janelle Ruff. She is also a certified assessor. So when I say we, we're the we. With a lot of the changes that are coming along as a result of the AMAR, which is the auditing minimum assessing requirements, the first 5 years have been completed, and as part of the new round of reviews that each local unit must go through, the first 2 pages that I handed out to you are the recommended property classifications for property. Now, we had found in our database, we were incorrectly, for example, if you look, there's no 099 in the class. We were using those for inactive parcels, when in fact, they should be coded 001 or 002, depending if they were real or personal. So part of the standards that are being approved throughout the state at this time are to bring all databases to utilizing these property classifications. Now, it's not just a simple thing of going in and adding in these codes and moving the property into the correct. We still have to maintain our balancing to make sure that our classifications, we're not inadvertently changing the overall classification, that we're keeping everything consistent. So to go through and to do this, we entered in the codes and then slowly have been reviewing the status to make sure we're putting them in to the proper classification. So if they're exempt, there are different classes you'll see on page 2 that start in the 700 numbers to give you an idea. So if it was Marquette Township owned property, you'd be looking at them being called 703s instead of we had them in 099, or I should say 099. So we're making our database meet the state requirements because this will be part of the review process. So we're being extremely proactive instead of reactive, because I want to be able to say, we passed this AMR in our first round instead of having to have any corrective actions for any deficiencies that may be noted in our database. Now you'll notice on page number 3, there's another standard that is being adopted by the state as highly recommended that include the different types of instrument codes that we should be utilizing in our database. Like a WD should stand for warranty deed, QD for a quitclaim, and so forth. And when you are entering in data based on all the instruments that are coming through that indicate there's transfers in ownership between different owners, previously we had a little free license to create our own codes to be able to try to describe the instrument that was conveying that interest or that ownership. Well, they're bringing us all into alignment that if you are in Marquette Township or if you're in Wayne County, these codes are consistent. So when we upload our database to the tax company, or last year it was Tax Management Associates that was actually performing these AMAR reviews, whomever is selected for this next round, when we upload our current database, these codes should be consistent. So it shouldn't matter, no matter where you're at in the state of Michigan, that we're all meeting the same code. So when they're looking to say, are you using good sales when you're developing your land values? Are you using good sales when you're analyzing your economic condition factors? That if they see something that doesn't appear to be consistent, that might be a flag. So we're being very proactive to try to get those all in place and corrected. I will tell you that when you talk about the terms of sale, arm's length is considered your best market indicator because you have a willing seller and a willing buyer that's informed. So you don't have any undue stress where they're not just trying to get rid of the property because they bought a property in another town and they were moving. So we verify this information to make sure it is a true indicator of how our market is moving. So when you are using all the same consistent codes in our database, then has what we call data integrity, then that's going to really help us when we're going through a review to say we took your memorandum seriously and we're making those changes in our database. This hasn't been mandated yet, but it is going to be probably down the road. We reviewed it, and the Michigan Assessors Association also said, you know what, if you have time, start working towards this. So we just have started to work on it, and we're not up for review until 2020, but we will have this already in place. Then you will see, as you guys all hear me talking, the last 2 pages, we've been talking about how we've been putting in computerized sketches and updating our electronic record system that's through our BSNA software. These are standard sketches that we're able to produce now out of Apex. That if we were to print out a record card and your sketch had been completed electronically, because Janelle has been performing these sketches and bringing everything in after we have done the field work. So if I printed an electronic copy, this sketch now is attached to your property record card as well as new updated digital pictures. So while we were going through the winter and not able to perform the necessary field work, Janelle has been starting at the very first parcel we have in the township. So she began by pulling all of our records right in a row and taking the sketches that we had hand-drawn and has been converting them into this electronic version you've been seeing. So I wanted to print you guys a copy so you can see how impressive this really looks when you're providing this to the public. This is a great tool then for us also when we're reviewing now our prior appraisals, because we're now starting back on our next 20% after our first 5 years. We're reviewing our own work. So now when we go out in the field and we can see it's a computer drawn sketch, now we're just looking to see, are there any changes? Has anything been converted, like a deck now into a Four Seasons room, where we would need to change that portion of the sketch? With the upgrade that we had completed with the Apex sketch, now instead of Janelle having to redraw all this, she can just change one portion. It was a huge improvement to the sketching program itself when we did the upgrade, that instead of her having to redraw, now she can just take whatever changes and modify them instead of having to start from scratch. So, we're really excited. We've been, the board's always been very gracious to allow us the technology and the upgrades. I just wanted to see what some of your authorizations have allowed us to be able to do in our department. We will be going out probably in the next week. I want to be in the field before Memorial Day starts because the weather's cooperating. We had 2 areas that we did not get through in the last 2 years due to different construction projects, whether it be township road project or if it was the electrical running the new poles along 550. So we have a couple of pockets that should have been completed the prior year, but it was not very safe to be going through those construction zones. So we're going to complete those first, and then we're going to go back up to start where we did 5 years ago. So that would be up in the northwest portion of Marquette Township, up off of Gold Mine Road, and to be going through those areas.
That's great.
Do you have any questions for me or anything?
I was going to hold this up for John. It's kind of light, but just in case the public can kind of get an idea.
I will touch upon also I didn't include it because the new section for the AMAR, they're wanting us to be able to provide as much, and I hate to overuse the phrase, but transparency in government. So part of this is having this information available on your online records. So if you were to look at what we have on our BSNA network that is viewable by the public, that information's public and it would be able to be viewed. So if you needed to print out what you had, this is the type of records you would now get, because we were getting some complaints from either real estate agents or title companies that some of our data was outdated. So that's part of this too. So if they're going to pay the fee to obtain these public records, it should be the most accurate. So we've been trying to at least have what we are showing in our files to be the most update. So if somebody's actually paying for the service, they're getting their money's worth. One of the other areas with the AMAR is there is a change coming through. So we had to meet certain criteria the first time. Now they're adding to it because they were finding certain deficiencies that were occurring all throughout the state. One of the big areas was granting of exemptions for charitable organizations that may be sales tax exempt. You know, they may file the paperwork saying they're a 5013C. That doesn't mean they meet the qualifications to not pay property taxes. So the part of this AMAR, which you will see or hear from me later this year, is the board I'm going to be requesting that, again, we want to be very proactive, that we have these policies in place and have a sample application. So if a charitable organization comes in and asks for that tax exemption off of property taxes, we just don't blanket grant them anymore. They have to apply and they have to qualify. So that's something that our board of review here, we have taken great pride in how knowledgeable our board of review is, that just because somebody feels that they are entitled or that they may qualify, we require them to prove their eligibility. So this is the other part of that concept, is that we have to have a policy in place with a sample application is preferable. So that way, if we are unable to say, yes, you qualify for this, it gives that organization or that entity the ability to appeal to the next level should we deny it.
Great.
Okay?
Good work.
Any questions for me? Yes?
When is this supposed to be, everybody's going to be on the same page with this? You know, when do you have, is there a date that every township, city, and everything's going to follow the same?
They haven't come right out and said this is going to be mandated. Again, it's one of those, if they're willing to put it in saying these are the adopted recommended, that I can see as part of our AMAR that it'll become one of those, you didn't meet this and it's going to result in a corrective action if you were found not to be following. They haven't come right out and said, here's your drop dead date, you must have it in. But I just don't want to be in that situation, that we get the no on our review, so.
It works very good. I'm just referring back to grocery because produce, the Apple has a code. It's the same code regardless what warehouse it is, so this is very good. It's very helpful in that area, so I know it's going to be a great asset to us.
And that's one of the big areas that we're seeing in the assessing field in itself, is more common standards so that everybody's kind of talking the same language and using the same codes. Because if you're on the receiving end of all these databases and everybody's got their own codes, unless you're having that direct dialogue with the local unit, you may be flagging them as being deficient when they're just using a different set of codes, but if you talk to them. So they're trying to funnel it down to where these are what's acceptable and just to kind of keep everybody on the same common standards.
And pardon me.
Go ahead, John.
And when it's adapted universally, when they enforce it and have everybody on the same page, comparisons across county lines will be comparable. You can then make sense of comparisons.
Correct. Because
Thank
that's
you.
one of the biggest things. If we're lucky enough here that we have a very active market, But if you're in certain areas, even in this county and other areas within the state, when we're performing our analysis to see what our market's doing, if you don't have a lot of those sales, you may be contacting a neighboring unit to say, what was some of your recent activity? And if you're not all using the same codes, you may get a sale that you wouldn't or shouldn't maybe be using, but then you would locally adjust it to make it to where it would be the most like your local unit.
It's gonna make more sense.
In the long run, yes. It's like anything, growing pains. I'll go kicking and screaming, but eventually I'll get there.
And Dulce's given us, she gave me a couple samples, and I like them to see the AMR questions too. I think that's really beneficial. So when we get to the point of having to do a policy, I can put it maybe on June or July's agenda.
That's why
We'll
I just
put that
kind of
in
wanted
there.
to touch upon it here
Yeah,
while you guys
so
were all
they're aware
sitting
of it.
here, but I think it's something that we should pull a few samples. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. The Michigan Townships Association's been very active in trying to come up with some templates that we can use to modify to make it specific to Marquette Township. Because there's another policy we need to address that's part of this AMAR review. If a property owner that purchases or sells property doesn't file a property transfer affidavit with the local unit, the way the statute reads right now is if it's not filed within 45 days, the local unit should be fining the person $5 a day to a maximum of $200. We currently don't do that. So if they're not filing it and I'm not collecting it, then I'm being considered deficient. But we need to figure out the cost benefit. How much are we really going to benefit with only collecting $200 maximum versus the cost of research, the cost of staff time, and the follow-ups and the letters and everything that'd be necessary? Or do we develop the resolution or a policy that allows us to opt out of that? I just can't make that determination. So then I'd be looking back to my governing body to say, how do you wish to have us proceed? We have to have this policy in place, so that way we can say we're compliant, we're adhering to the board's wishes. So that'll be, I'm gonna have a couple of things, so that's why I would just as soon, like Lynn said, do it at June or to July where it's not such a heavy agenda.
Well, this is a good icebreaker.
Sure.
Kind of get them familiar. And I
you.
do want to give you extra kudos for the July 11th class.
Oh,
I've
yes.
mentioned that to you guys.
I
This
signed
is-
you up, Pete.
This is not assessing 101 that she is doing, and it's not going to put you to sleep. It's very general on the whole thing and how it affects the township. Because I've been to a lot of the MTA assessing classes, and you just glaze over. This is not that. And this, I really think that as many of you that could attend should. It's all day, that's the hard part. But like I said, I thought I'd be closing my eyes halfway through, and Dulcie did a great job.
I only went back and slapped her once on the way up.
We should be very lucky to have both of them being proactive and doing what they are doing to keep us on the top of everything, so.
Because when they came in and really hunkered down with this after the previous regime, they had a lot of work to get stuff reorganized and refiled, and then this is just part of it, but this is the new stuff.
Yeah, I think
So
you're
on
doing
the
a great
first
job.
AMR, I say we, because we're all responsible, we had some checkoffs that we weren't the best on, and they jumped on it right away and started working on how to fix them.
The biggest thing is the
So-
board's been very proactive about trying to keep our public very informed about some of the changes that we were needing to do to bring our role into compliance. Because I have heard from other jurisdictions, the whole phrase about removing property out of overrides, their board of review was hours long because people just weren't understanding it, but we had had enough communication to be able to explain it to the public that we only had a handful that came in. And then once we explained how that worked and how the cost manual works, I'm hoping they went back and told their neighbors, because it really cut down the amount of traffic we had coming in to complain or to seek the information.
Kind
But
of
I just would
response
like
are
to
you-
thank Janelle too, because quite honestly, if she wasn't so good at her job, I wouldn't be as successful in my job. She's my right arm, I say it all the time. So all those sketches, you don't want me trying to draw them. It would look, it would be all scribbled. She's got a CAD background, so it makes a world of difference in our department.
What kind of response are you getting from the residents when you come and make changes in that?
Well, we do a little extra. I like to take the opportunity to explain why we're doing it, so they don't feel that we're out there on a witch hunt. I try to explain this is what's going on, this is what's required by our state, And these are the steps that we need to do. And if they're not sure, because I don't carry the cost manual with me in the field, I welcome them to come and sit down with us, or I can come back. That seems to work real well. In fact, we have a lot of property owners that if they know they're going to be building and want to understand kind of an idea of what tax implications it'll have, because let's put it this way, you can't undo it once you build it. So we'll have them come in and give us their plans, and we can come pretty close. Again, it's just a ballpark because we're not going to know until we actually see what's been constructed. But we give all the disclaimers saying, you know, based upon the square footage, based on what you're telling us, I can price it out in the computer and say this is approximate what it would do to your taxes. And I always let them know, you know, if you improve any of these standards where it may result in a change in your quality of construction, expect your taxes to change. But I feel that's part of our job.
No, that's good.
Your taxpayers, you know, they pay our wages, so.
Anything else
Thank
for
you.
the team? Okay,
All right,
thanks.
thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
both.
Okay, now we have the fire department here, we can squeeze you in. I didn't know you got a call right before you were coming in. Hope everything worked out all right on that.
Did it on purpose.
Good evening. Since Chief Shanahan asked me to come, I answer any questions you might have. You have Chief DeMars's report. Basically, I'm here to answer any questions you might have over Chief's report.
Well, you've been busy with your ambulance, we know that.
Yes, ma'am.
Good 70-80% in some cases. That's been
And the
beneficial.
report was very good.
Mm-hmm. Get back to it. Anything you want to share with us? How did, is Mike gone this week, or is it next week?
Mike returned to work today.
Today,
He was
okay, it was
sick
last week.
yesterday, but he attended National Fire Academy, Principles of Fire Inspection. He said it was a great course.
He was there all week. And that's kind of a chosen, you have to, do you actually apply for it, or are you appointed to be able
No,
to
you
take this?
apply.
Okay.
There's
And then
criteria you
you're
have to meet and you apply
chosen.
for it.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. What for our fire department, anything? Just so you know, I did put, one of our capital improvement discussions is going to be apparatus. Maybe the, June 19th meeting, more than likely, if we keep on our schedule the way we're supposed to. So Ron will already be retired, but, I mean, not that he can't come too and talk, because he's got a wealth of knowledge, but that's what I'm kind of shooting for. So we can come up with some kind of direction, even if we don't make any decisions that day. Because by the time we get into the budget in July, we're going to need to have some kind of direction for you guys.
We have been tracking, you know, Rob has been tracking the equipment. You know, we've been talking about that periodically, about the age in particular of our primary apparatus, which is, you know, like anything else that ages, things are getting tired and being required to be replaced. And we're tracking those pretty closely, and you see those reports in terms of the pieces of equipment. I think one of the things that some board members may not realize, but I'm sure the public doesn't realize, is that Chief DeMars, his last official day as chief was last Friday, as full-time chief. However, he is not leaving the department. He's remaining as a member of the department. He's simply stepping down as a full-time chief because his wife told him to, in
Those
essence.
darn wives.
In essence, it's time to start traveling, and it's time to start doing some fun things that they've been putting off. So that was his reason for stepping down as chief, and we're actively in the process of working on the replacement for that. We do have candidates that we're looking at and ready to start preliminary interview processes with them. But at any event, you know, the same things that we've been talking about are ongoing. Primary concern is the age of our equipment, not necessarily its condition. It's all in good condition, but it is getting older, and as it gets older, like everything else that gets older, pieces and parts start to wear and start to fail, and some of them are pretty expensive, some of them are not. But even those that are not could make a piece of equipment not available. You know, things like, there's a lot of moving parts on on one of those pieces of equipment, you know, and simple, small things like the last major repair was a bearing. But to get to that bearing, the entire rear end had to be taken off of the unit, and it was out of service for, what, 4 weeks almost? 4 to 5 weeks, out of service while that bearing was being found and replaced. So, it's not like, not a minor type of a thing. Even tires, if a tire goes bad, those tires are upwards of $1,200 a piece. They're not small. So that's the reason we've been talking about trying to find some kind of a mechanism to build up an account, a fund, to be able to deal with those issues and ultimately to potentially replace equipment as it ages. Fire equipment is a little bit different than other pieces of equipment. There at one time was legislation that certain number of years, certain number of miles you replace. Well, that's currently suspended, but that doesn't mean that it won't come back at some point. So from that standpoint, all of our equipment is certainly roadworthy and response capable all the time. Even when it's not, when the one piece of equipment was out of service, we did have backup from other departments. So the township was always covered. It was never found to, never in a position of peril at all. So beyond that, if there are any other questions the board members might have of the department?
It's amazing how many calls they're getting now for the EMS.
50 calls in April, and 40 of them were EMS.
You're getting a little bit close to my house, or 3 houses away, so. But it's, when we first went into this thing, we talked about how many and how much we can recover and stuff like that, but I think it's working out pretty good. I'm a little surprised about the amount of calls that we're getting, and,
Well,
this is a voluntary department, and you have to give the fire people agreed hands up, because, they're always there, they never miss a call, and so I think they're out there.
time frame is awesome, too.
Yes.
How quickly they're getting there. Yes, Dan?
Thank you.
I'd just like to also thank Rob and the staff over there for a lot of the smaller type maintenance problems that do occur, that they're able to save the township a lot of money by doing these repairs themselves. And they always keep a good maintenance program going. They keep records. They know when things are that need attention, and they can take care of it. And I just wanted to thank you for all your work on that.
I'll pass that on. If I may add, the equipment, we maintain it, but they're not getting any younger. They're more prone to breakage. Just this week, we got very lucky. We had 2178. We're going to pump, but wouldn't throttle up. We got very fortunate. We found the problem to be a bad ground, and we were able to fix it right away. But that would've been
In-house.
very costly. We had to go out for that.
They can do a lot of troubleshooting right there and take care of it, so.
Ernie?
I think we as a board, we've talked about it in the past, how we're going to move forward and trying to be us in a position so that if something happens to a major piece of equipment, how are we going to fund it or do that? I look at the aerial, which was purchased when I was on the board in the 90s. You're talking 24 years right now in that. We paid somewhere around $300,000, $350,000 for it. Now it's $1 million to do something like that. So if something happens there, you can't fix it, you have to replace it, you have to make a decision. We either go without or we have to go in debt, big time. So I think the board has to start thinking about how we can move forward as far as financially for replacing equipment.
June 19th, we will talk about, we'll start the
Okay.
discussion.
The only way we can only bond it as a
As of right
procedure
now.
right now, unless you can find a lot of money, right, Ernie, but it is. We have to look at that, because they are gonna come to a point that you just can't fix them anymore.
Okay, anything else for the fire department? Great, thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
I'm just glad they're there.
Mhm. Okay, now we can get back into our regularly scheduled program. Number 8 is policy discussion, consideration, and development. And I put discuss planning commission CIP. And I'd like to schedule a work session. Tell me this, though, before we get too far into this. it's been suggested that we do more work sessions, or some of these deep discussion type things, that we have a work session instead. The policy manual says that we should be covering a lot of these policy discussions in our second meeting of the month. And I just want to make sure, I'm not going to put stuff on the agenda if you want to schedule it for a work session. So I'm just kind of looking for preference, because sometimes you kind of fall asleep when I say, let's schedule a work session. But I want to make sure that we're going to do these right, because I've got June pretty much packed. Dave?
I personally prefer the work session. You just seem to get more done,
Yeah.
and the discussions are a little freer. And
Okay, sorry.
you put this stuff in a regular meeting agenda, and we're approaching 3 hours in a meeting, and I think that's just too long.
I agree. I love work sessions. I always have. And they do seem to be more productive. So do you want to try to, the policy things that we need to talk about, I've got some reports I need to give you and have you fill them out prior to the report, or to the meeting. So do you want to try to do like a meeting half hour, an hour, or 2 hours before our regular meeting? So that you don't have another day you're giving up? Or do you want to, I mean, it's hard with Randy's work schedule. Do you want to do it like on a Saturday?
You have some committees meeting prior to our meeting.
And you're just going to add another day to them.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm
so
trying to come up with
they'd have to change their time and date.
Yeah,
I think work sessions are all right as long as, I think they're the best of all worlds. But I'd like them to be planned and negotiated.
that's why I'm wondering, do you want to try to do them like the week in between our two meetings? Or always look at the fourth week maybe? Just so, like I said, I've got a full agenda for us, you know, through December. And I need to figure out how to get these discussions in if we want to continue with policy governance, besides the budget meetings. Now, some of this in the next couple months is going to tie in to budgeting, especially the CIP. And actually, I'd like to save that CIP discussion. There's some stuff I want to get for you.
Would you like to consider picking a day and a period of the month, and then have that as
Yes,
the planned
That's
period?
kind of what I'm going for.
Mondays at 4 or something like that. I don't know how that works for everybody, but
Yeah.
I think you could make that inquiry, and they could then not schedule something else that would keep them out of the meeting. Because I think we need a full board at the work session. So if that's your intent,
That's
why
what I'm
don't you
thinking.
perhaps in a survey, find out what's most available, and we can all then plan other meetings that we attend, not on those dates.
Do you want to stick with Tuesdays, maybe? Would that work?
I would think the guy that it affects more than anybody else is
Yeah.
the
Randy.
clerk.
And how often does your shift change? Is it like every week or every 2 weeks?
Well, it changes, every week, but most afternoons are better. After 3,
And the specific day, does that make a difference?
no.
What do you think? Do you
3
want
to
to?
5.
Yeah, 3 to 5.
3 to 5, now work on a day.
3 to 5's fine.
And then do like the second Tuesday
How
of
does
the
that
month?
affect you, Dave? 3 to 5.
It's fine. As long as I know about it ahead of time.
There are some months that we do have 5 Tuesdays, so like this month we have, the 29th is open.
Yeah, I'd really like to do something sooner than later, because our budgeting's going to be coming up pretty quick.
Actually, 2:30 to 4:30 would be ideal.
Well, that works too. I mean,
Well, we have a work session on the 30th already.
yeah,
Yep.
Mhm.
that's at night.
Solid waste, yeah.
That works for me, 2:30 to
30
4:30.
Yeah, that's
That-
not quite so late.
And plus, you won't have to pay staff to stay over too.
Okay, so you want to look at next Tuesday,
29th?
the 22nd,
Oh,
2:30 to 4:30?
What happened to Mondays?
I just said Tuesday because that's a regular day we meet. Is Monday better? Does it matter?
The first and the second Tuesday is fixed.
Right.
That's the only fixed time we
First and
have.
third.
So,
First and third, right?
First and third.
third, pardon me. And so, pick it, why don't you solicit what day other than that?
That's fine.
Mondays are fine.
Try Mondays.
Mondays are fine.
Mondays are tough for me, but. if it-
Wednesdays
if
are
it
fine.
wants to do it, that's fine.
Tuesdays work better for me if you did them on the off Tuesday.
Okay, okay.
Off Tuesday.
Dan, how's your
So
schedule?
Dave is suggesting the second Tuesday, 3 to 5?
Yeah, the second or fourth, either one.
Well,
That's fine.
In this
What-
case, it'll be the 4th.
but if we're gonna keep it open, do you wanna have 2 or just 1?
Let's start with 1, so I make sure you're all there.
Yeah. So it'd be the second Tuesday, 3,
2:30 to 4:30. But in this case, we're going to do it the 22nd, so that's the 4th Tuesday. Just for this,
Not necessarily, because you haven't asked about that.
well, that's
yet.
what I'm saying, that's what we're looking at right now.
We're looking, I thought we were looking at trying to find a day of the week, a time of the month, that we would ask the board to keep open for work sessions. If you're doing that.
I want to do both. I would like to schedule one, preferably for next week.
Can't you get through? Okay, try your way.
I want a meeting next Tuesday, is that going to work? Or Wednesday?
Tuesday works for me.
Tuesday's fine for me.
That's the 22nd,
Give us a time.
2:30 to 4:30.
Got it.
Going once, going twice, so
Okay, and that's going to be, for posting purposes, we're going to talk about CIP, and that's broad enough. It's going to cover quite a bit. And I'll give Kirk a
Said
start.
2 to 4?
2:30 to 4:30,
2:30 to 4:30. Okay.
Tuesday, the 22nd. Now, if we want to figure the second Tuesday of the month as our standard, that's totally fine for me. It'd be the 12th next time. And we can just plan on it, and if it doesn't work, we can shift it. I was more interested in making sure we have a meeting established, and this is the way you want to do our
An opening,
deliberating.
an opening.
Yes, okay? So I don't know if you want to post Tuesday the 12th yet or not, maybe wait.
Well, we do have a meeting before that, so we'll wait.
Yeah, we could change it. Okay.
So we need a motion to schedule that work session, which I'll
So
make.
moved.
I'll make. You can support that.
All right.
Tuesday, the 22nd, for the purpose of the CIP discussion, 2:30 to 4:30.
Thank you, yes. All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? I know this is hard when you're listening to a meeting to have to go through this, but we can't get together and visit like this, so we have to do it at these meetings.
So you're not setting the following schedule yet?
No.
No.
We will at the June 5th
19th,
meeting.
Or June 5th, yeah.
Because we do have a work session on the 7th, too.
7th. Yes, on committees. Maybe
5
we
to
can roll
7.
that in. Would you have posted that yet?
Yep.
I December.
Posted.
5 to 7.
That's fine. That's fine. Because that still falls into what we have to talk about.
And
Okay.
the 12th, we have to get out at 4:30 though,
In for a raise.
because that's Randy's
Yeah.
birthday.
Think so, huh?
Randy retirees birthday on the 12th.
And we have to celebrate?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for that.
Before you
Yes.
drift away.
Yes.
For the CIP session that's on the 22nd, I'll just, it came, when I read that, we were going to discuss that. I took a look at the CIP planning that was passed out to a previous board on October 8th, 2007. It still works today. At least it's got information in there of interest. And I call it to everybody's attention so that it's part of the planning, and you can either like it or dislike it, but at least it's there. It's a 3-page, in-depth plan for CIP planning. And our manager has a copy of that from back then.
What's the date, John?
It was October 8th, 2007, and nobody on this board was on that board.
Randy was.
Oh.
I was there.
Randy
I was
Ricciari
there.
was, this is when he was a trustee. Okay, he was there and a young person.
Okay,
But
that's
anyway,
good.
some in-depth thought was given to this, and I'd just like to share it. And that, you have it.
Okay, you can give me a copy of that when we get finished.
I gave it to you.
Me?
You have a copy.
I do?
Yep, it's
Okay.
in that pile,
Okay.
right there.
Good deal. That's what that is, okay. Thank you. Okay, first reading we need for the proposed short-term rental tax amendment. Text amendment. I'm sorry, Roger.
There's an issue with that,
With what?
this agenda item.
The text amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
I did an opinion, a legal opinion on March 23rd of 2018.
Okay.
That went to the zoning administrator, the supervisor, and the township manager, and I recommended a change to section 16.13, and I'm not quite sure if it was the decision to ignore the advice, or whether this is just the wrong insert, but the material that was in the board packet, and I didn't discover this until about 5:15 this evening, is, I still maintain that section 16.13 needs a revision from what's in there.
Okay, is that the only thing that you saw?
Yes.
Okay. Not making light of what you said, but I just want to make sure there isn't, like, pages that are different.
So, I would suggest that we probably defer the first reading at this point to just clarify why the recommended revision isn't in the board packet material. There might be a completely logical explanation to that, but it's escaping me if there is.
So the highlight and everything showing that it's new is not the part that you had agreed to, or it's recommended?
I recommended that a section be taken out, and it's still in.
Oh, that's it, okay. Okay.
Well, I'll move then to defer this item to the next agenda on June 5th.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next agenda.
Hey, Randy, Roger needs that back to him.
What is it? Was I supposed to look at it?
That was the,
Yeah, that was mentioned today, in fact. At the joint meeting we had.
Take
Okay.
that back to the planning commission on Wednesday, it's next Wednesday, a week from Wednesday.
Okay.
And
And then we'll have it,
make sure it was not an oversight.
it's not gonna be till the June 5th meeting, so we'll have 4 weeks
Yep.
before we get it back.
Which item was he talking about?
Okay.
Okay. Are we good? Okay. We didn't have any pulled items from the consent agenda. How about committee updates?
Not a lot. Planning commission meeting at the first of the month was canceled due to lack of agenda items. The road committee meeting, you got a briefing on at the last board meeting. And the rec committee meeting that just preceded this meeting tonight, we talked about pickleball again. We had a number of representatives there. And we further explained the planning commission's recommendation and the board's opinion that of how that should proceed this year, and that there shouldn't be any permanent indicators on any surfaces over there that suggest pickleball. They were more than receptive to that idea, and they were reminded that this is under consideration by the rec committee for recommendation back to the planning commission and then back to the board for final determination on how to proceed.
But we do have some kind of striping on the tennis courts, right? Is it tape or painted?
It's
or-
painted.
Painted.
That was approved by the board a year or two ago.
Yeah, I thought I remember that. I
Yeah,
didn't know how permanent.
That's over there. They were kind of hinting towards the paint would be much easier, and they understand completely, and that won't be happening on the ice rink until after there's a determination made by the board.
Okay.
But other than that, the rec committee talked about the park cleanup on the 26th, and then the Iron Trade and Roll in June 2nd. Yeah.
Yep.
And that was pretty much it. We've, we did talk about, and I don't know if I should bring that up or not, about changing the approaching path for the underpass and moving it from Menard's property for a large portion over onto the Schwemmwood property because of where Menard's piles their snow, and it could be a possible problem. The DNR is proposing that we move it right along the edge of the Schwemmwood Park and then step into Menard's for about 50 feet or so and then go back into the AT&T property. It was a consensus of the rec committee that they didn't see any problem with that. Jason's still working on it. He will present it to the planning commission at their meeting a week from Wednesday, and at which point it'll come back to the board for a recommendation. But that's the general concept of what they're looking at, and it's strictly to accommodate Menard's snow piling.
Is that up to us?
It's up to us to grant them an easement for the trail.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if
But
the snow
it'll-
blowing part and changing.
That was very preliminary talks tonight, and just the concept was discussed, and you'll see it in its full-blown glory at your,
More like gore, right?
more like
Yeah.
gory at your next meeting.
Okay. All right, any questions for Dave? Okay. We have no committee appointments. Public comment. Anybody want to share anything? Okay. And our wrap-up announcements, anybody? Anybody think to share? Yes, John?
I'm not sure whether this is really an announcement. We talked about during budget session, and we've had conversation more than once about CPL and employees. I think that what we need, and a number of the board have brought this up, I'm not alone on this, that we need to request a resolution be drafted, and I think by the manager, rescinding the current policy regarding employee CPL and have him present a lesser restrictor policy for township board consideration. With that, then the board would review that, what's proposed, and then take action. And that's what's needed. We've talked about it off and on. A number of us have been interested in it, and I think that we need the manager's input on that resolution. It wouldn't be, it's a policy change.
Yeah.
And so, and I think it would be nice to have it come up on on an agenda item, and I recommend that it be crafted by our manager and then presented to the board for consideration. But that's basically what it is. It's a rescinding of the current policy regarding employee CPL, and have that also present a lesser restrictive policy for township board consideration.
Randy, I was, in fact, I was going to catch you today on that. We've got a couple things that the staff was looking at, and I was wondering if we can kind of bundle them. Or some of the things we're talking about are contract-wise, so I don't know how that, because it might be a policy we'll have to implement. Can we kind of put them all together at one point? That's why I haven't brought it up.
Well, I actually have had it as an addition on my manager's report as well, because a couple of things are in play currently. Number one is that you're absolutely right. One of the bargaining units has requested that the township board consider a policy change with regard to security in the township facilities and properties and vehicles. And, and that primarily goes along with the Michigan Open Carry Act and various other actions that have been taken relatively recently, and incidents that have occurred not necessarily here, but in other public facilities and other places just recently, a day or so ago in Oakland County. They had to shut down the courthouse over a threat. The reason I have it on, had it on here as an addendum is because it goes beyond that. We have the other bargaining unit has concerns about the protections within this particular building in terms of access to folks that we've had less than favorable reactions or relations with recently. As an example, just earlier this week, in fact, was it Friday? I think it was Friday. We had to remove some people from Schwemmwood Park, and at least one of them has a history in another state of a violent, in fact, has a felony warrant out in that state, and in-state only. So there's concern about access to the building and access within the building and things such as that. So what I was going to bring up tonight, it was just generally under policy consideration is what I was going to call it. You do have one policy right now that that absolutely forbids township staff to have firearms on any township property or in the township facility. That does not apply to the general public, who has the capacity to walk in here any day, any time, carrying arms, carrying weapons. Perfectly legal. We can't because of the policy. Half of your staff currently are holders of concealed weapons, concealed pistol licenses, have gone through the training, have been licensed to carry concealed pistols, don't because you have a policy in place that doesn't allow it. However, as a general citizen, were they not an employee, they could walk in to the building carrying anything, rifle, handgun, whatever, in the state of Michigan. So that is a consideration the board needs to take a look at. The reason I was going to bring it up tonight is because it conceivably does have budget implications, because if we wanted to do something to have somebody not be down here in the woods taking back shots at you guys through these dry walls, we need to do something about doing internal or external protections for things like that. And I did acquire from their website the Homeland Security recommendations for public buildings. They're not inexpensive. They have budgetary implications. So there's some relatively minor things you could do, like protective glasses at the protective glass at the front counter, like you see in almost every other public building these days. But they do have budget implications. And I wanted to at least start the conversation at this meeting, because within the next 2 weeks we're going to start putting together a preliminary 19 budget. So I did want to bring that information to discussion this evening as part of my manager's report to see what the board's position on that is. If you would like to see, and I have asked our labor council to take a look at a revised policy that wouldn't be alarming to folks, but would provide some flexibility for the board were you to decide to amend the policy. So that hopefully will be coming to you at your next meeting for at least consideration to take a look at. But
Go ahead, John.
The point of my requesting this is that the revision to the policy that's in place, I don't think has monetary.
no, that does not.
And it probably would be a reach to say that it has a negotiating value, I guess, of some, other than, I thought it was a courtesy on their part to bring that up, that they had to, an employee can't even park their car out there and have it contained.
No.
Because that's public, that's our property. And the policy would prohibit that. And all I'm trying to do is, with a simple change in policy by the board, is provide that opportunity for them to have the same privilege that every board member has and every citizen that walks through the door has. It wouldn't do a whole lot. And then all the other things about putting in protective glass and things like that, or other provisions in the township property to be more secure, that's another issue, and that's going to cost money, and that's going to need board thought. But this one can get handled rather quickly.
Right, the request from the bargaining unit was that the board simply rescind that particular policy, and it's about a 2-sentence policy. It's a very small policy. So that was the request would be for the board to consider rescinding that policy and replace it with something else.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to continue with your manager's report then, Randy?
I think we're pretty much there, aren't we,
Yeah.
at the manager's report? Okay. You do have a printed report. As in prior years, we have Memorial Day coming up, and we typically, for the last at least 5 years, have modified our office hours during the summer between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And I have on here a request for consideration of that. We still are open from 8 o'clock to 4:30. Basically, what we do is we restructure who comes in when, half-hour lunch. So we're still covered from 8 until 5 at least. But formal office hours, it would be 8 to 4:30. So that's a request for your consideration. Community Events Committee, we have our first event coming up on on June 16th, Saturday, which is the Saturday of Father's Day weekend, Westwood Mall parking lot. It's our annual car show and cruise that's coming up. It's going to kick off about 10 o'clock. And starting at 11, we'll have static displays and exhibits. We'll have some other activities going on from 1:30 to 2 o'clock. We'll have prizes for the best vehicles, different categories that the participants and the visitors will be voting on. There'll be a raffle, basically, for the favorite vehicle that has the best of show, basically. And then we'll typically do a cruise, so we'll go out and folks in the neighborhoods can view the cars as they drive by. So that's going to be happening on Saturday, June 16th, starting at 10 o'clock, runs till about 3 o'clock. Anybody who brings their car in and registers gets a free lunch for them and whoever came with them, their partner. And it's a lot of fun. It's a nice casual afternoon. Folks that like old, classic, new, hot rods, 60s vintage, whatever. We got a little bit of everything that's in there. We even had military vehicles last year. Privately owned, but they were military vehicles nonetheless. So come on out, have some fun. Lions Field, we're a little bit behind on the baseball schedule simply because we just a couple of days ago got rid of the last of the snow that was on the field, and it was still pretty soft, but I believe within the next week or week and a half we'll be starting to see games back on our field. They've been playing elsewhere. They've been basically they reformatted their schedule, so they were playing in Escanaba and places south. So now they're reciprocating, and those folks are coming back up here for the rest of the season. So you'll start seeing that coming up pretty quickly. Corridor Committee last met on May 8th, up at the Ishpeming offices. You have minutes of that meeting coming to your meeting on June 19th. You do have in this packet, you have the minutes of the April 10th meeting. And the last thing that I wanted to bring up is because we had spring so late this year, we've had a lot of interest in where people get rid of leaves and brush. City of Marquette is just starting to do theirs this week. I spoke with, we didn't really have any kind of a spring cleanup. We do in the fall. We have a 2-week period during the fall so where folks can dispose of their leaves and brush, but we've never done spring. So I did talk with North Country, and they have agreed to offer to the township a schedule this year. They will not be doing it, they'll be doing it themselves. It's not a township funded, but for $10 a day, you can haul as many loads of leaves or brush as you wish to North Country Disposal. And they basically, not on weekends, they're not open weekends, none of the disposal places are open on the weekends, but they did provide a schedule for, let's see.
Randy
For
did forward that to you, too. It's in your email.
Yeah, I did send it by email, but for next week, Monday, the 21st, Wednesday, the 23rd, Friday, the 25th, on Monday it's 9 and 6, and we'll publish this. We'll send it out as an e-blast, and we'll put it in the paper as well. But Monday, the 21st, for between 9 and 6, Wednesday, the 23rd, between 9 and 6, Friday, the 25th, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. The following week, they're going to be closed on Memorial Day, but they will also be accepting Wednesday, the 30th, between 9 and 6, and Friday, the 1st, between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. And again, that would be a $10 charge, one day, for the day, and as much as you can haul during that day for that $10.
So if you need to come back with 5 truckloads,
5
that's
truckloads, 6 truckloads, doesn't matter. Trucks and trailers, whatever, as much as you want to haul, $10 a day. So I thought that was a pretty good bargain to give to our residents to try and assist them in getting rid of what they didn't get rid of last fall. So we'll publish this. This just came today, so we'll publish this by e-blast as well as putting it in the paper, newspaper.
Plus the county landfill?
County landfill is still the same as always.
It's
Yeah,
free.
that's free, but it has to be tarped and weighed, but it's a free drop-off, so you can do the county landfill as well, but this is just an extra, depending on how much you have.
Or is it the first Wednesday?
First Wednesday of the month in June will be the same thing, our normal drop-off. That's our normal first Wednesday drop-off, which is free. But these are additional days that if folks are working in their yard, they can get rid of it.
Does anybody want to make a motion about the summer hours?
I'll make a motion, we accept the summer hours again this year.
Support.
Any comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Okay, you have that.
Do we have summer hours for the board meetings?
Yes, it start at 6:30 and they run until they're done.
Any questions for the manager? Yes, John?
Not a question, but a compliment. We constantly have reports here at our meetings, getting input and reports from the various departments that work under the guidance of our manager. And while we recognize the people who make those reports and whatnot, and we know that we have great employees, I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that much of all of that occurs under the guided hand of our manager. And I think that every now and then, with all that goes on, we ought to take a moment to say thank you. I think our staff, from the manager down, would compliment any professional organization, and I think we need to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's nothing gonna top that, so we might as well just close it up here. Any other board member
I'm not going to
comment?
have my negative things in after that. I'll wait for a comment from them.
Go ahead, board member comments. Or no, we're not there yet.
No.
Anyway, we gotta do Randy's review.
Okay, review of the motions this evening is, we got the consent agenda approved as presented. Approval of the agenda as presented. The third motion was is to discontinue the work on the DWRF water project. Fourth motion was to schedule the work session on the 22nd at 2:30. The fifth motion was to defer the first reading of the text amendment for short-term rentals to the next agenda. Sixth motion was to approve summer hours. No action items.
Awesome. So for the next agenda, I'm moving the short-term reading, and we'll talk about the CPL policy. Randy can put that together, the wording together. And I don't know, like I said, if we have a couple other things that the employees, we could either do separate policies, or however, we can look at that the next, because we got 4 weeks.
In the library will be coming in June
Yep,
also.
I've got her on there confirmed. Andrew's already got that set up. She'll be visiting with us. What else do I have on here that I could tell you? We're gonna talk about our financial condition and probably the assessing policy. Capital is gonna be June. Library, DDA public hearing, yeah. So, June will be busy, and then we'll start the budget. Now, any board member comment? Yes, Dave?
I know we've talked about this a couple of times briefly, but in consideration of the budget discussions that are coming up faster than we might want them, I would be interested for one to hear if the manager has any suggestions or proposals that he would like to share with the board with respect to economies of the workforce to be realized, or improvement in service to be realized from some restructuring of some departments. And I certainly don't want him to speak to it tonight. I'd be interested in hearing if there's anything we could do there that might either save us some money or improve service.
We've kind of almost got something like that we've been kind of kicking around.
Well, I'd like to move past kicking around.
Well, it may involve the contracts too, so that, we've got a lot of policy, employee stuff going on. So we'll have to put it in a package for you.
There you go. I'm done.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes. The spring cleanup thing, I don't like, even though it's only $10, but it's kind of hard to clean up your yard all in one day sometimes, and, I just think we should have get more people that can take advantage of going more often. And that will lead right into my next one. I had a lady talk to a lady about people are dumping leaves and that on the right-of-ways of the streets, like a vacant street. They're just dumping it right in there, and it's getting closer and closer to her house. And that's not allowed, and that's what I'm thinking. People are dumping other places than where we should be dumping.
Yes.
Mark, let's see. On Moran Street, Mrs. Roach approached me, I talked to her, called me up. And the water, what can be done about the water on Moran Street? I talked to Randy about before, he knows where I'm coming from. And she said she called the Marquette County Road. They said, if you have $84,000, we can fix it for you. Well, it's not her problem. So I'd like to see some, if Randy could check into that and just get back to Mrs. Roach. And she lives right down, probably know where she lives, block and a half down, so.
Is that a result of the road project?
No, it's Moran Street. It's it's right out here. It's the water that comes down off of the rock that runs down Moran Street. It's pretty much destroyed that eastbound lane on Moran Street. And then it turns and goes down Vandenboom. It's an uncontrolled drain. It's not a township problem, but it's becoming a township problem with residents.
And you know, it goes.
Money problem
It
with
goes
us.
back to us saving the road commission $7 million, and they don't have money to do anything when we ask them. Now, maybe we can't do an $84,000 project, or they can't, but that's not reasonable.
But it should have been done ahead of time. Randy
Yeah.
talked to him before.
I mean, this is just ridiculous.
It shouldn't have become a road problem. It's a drainage. It's a drainage problem.
They're the connection to the drain commissioner, too.
Well, they are, but the water that we're talking about used to drain into this swamp area back here. But then when Moran Street was extended out to Commerce, that was buried instead of any kind of a pipe being put under it to run that water under. So now it comes down the hillside, hits the road, turns right, and heads right down the edge of the road, and it's basically eroded away the edge of the road. It's now broken up from the spring thaw, and it's serious potholes and alligatoring. It's a mess.
One of the notes I put on my MTA thing when I came back was make an appointment with the drain commissioner. So I don't know how we do that, if we have to go through the road commission.
That's not part of an established drain, so it's not the drain commissioner.
Well, and that's what we were talking
Yeah.
about, or what I was thinking when I went to some of those classes, is maybe we need another district. We need to create one, or whatever the term would be.
Well, drainage district has to do with streams, and this isn't really a stream. This is groundwater. This is coming out of
Strictly streams?
This is coming out of the ground. Pretty much, it's drainage, by streams and creeks that runs to another larger drain. But this is groundwater that's coming, following the rocks, coming down and pouring onto the street.
There's two locations that it's coming
Yeah.
off and it's ruining the roads. And then we, through our maintenance thing, we have to fix it.
Well, that wasn't part of our project.
Yeah, but I mean-
That's why I
But it
asked
needs
if
to
it
be
was.
fixed. I
Right.
mean, it needs to be repaired.
Yes, Dave?
I think there's probably more to this story than what we're getting tonight. The question that comes to my mind is Moran Street Extension has not been done that long ago. I'm curious why whatever entity did that extension, were they supposed to accommodate that drain going underneath the road, and if they were, who did the job and why didn't they do it, I guess is what questions I come up with, and it seems to me that somebody should at least be held accountable for that.
If they have $84,000.
Well, I mean, was that a project that was done but paid for by the township and done by the county? Or was that, I mean, how was that done?
It was all part of the acquisition of the property for this facility. The road commission did the actual design and construction work of the road, but it was in partnership with the township at the time.
But was part of that design and construction of the road to take the water under the road, or was it just a?
Don't know, we didn't design it. It was a design, we didn't engineer or design the road. So don't know the question to that, and I don't remember right
the
offhand.
question that comes up is, here I am talking about the county again, they engineered it. We do a whole construction project, and we just, as a county, allow the water to just dead end on the road with no more thought to where it's gonna go, and we actually fill in the ditch where it used to take it over to the proper drainage district, and we don't do anything about it. It would have been a simple matter to put in a drain and a culvert, so it could get underneath the road to where it's supposed to go. And nobody'd have any problems, we'd still have a road out there that you can drive on going east.
So do they have a complaint box at the Nishwaming that we can fill out a form?
Well, we can certainly raise it again.
I think we should. That's
But the
great.
thing that there's a safety factor, because it goes down,
Well, there's
it goes right to Vanderbilt, it floods right across Vanderbilt, it's very slippery in both intersections, Cox and the other.
All winter long.
All winter long and all summer long, and it just eats up our roads.
Well, we just spent $7 million fixing roads, and we are ruining them. with the
We aren't.
water that is continuously
Yeah,
on top of that road.
I think Jim needs to call Randy and find out what his excuses are.
All right, the next item I have, because we have to get out of here.
Thanks, Pete.
I'd like to see some kind of a safety practice for our public works people when they're parking and working on along the road. I just seen them working along the road the other day, and I just didn't think the cones were in the right spots. Now, I understand that on their TV there, that somebody got killed or got hurt on a construction zone. They got hit. Well, with today, with everyone on their phones and stuff like that, I don't want our people to get hurt. So I think we have to have a policy, and a lot of companies have policies where you put the cones. We don't put one on top of the hood, but you have to put them along the side of the vehicle. And we want to keep them safe while they're working, and they're right out in the road. The roads are being fixed up. They're all fixed up now. People are traveling a little bit faster, and it bothers me that, we don't want any of our people to get hurt. So if we have a policy maybe get one from another company, how you're supposed to do that.
Sure, they have safety protocols. We follow OSHA
I
rules.
know
I'll
they
bring
do,
it up
so
with Kirk.
I know they have them, so.
Yeah, I'll bring it up with Kirk.
Yeah, just see if Kirk can do something and insist upon that our people do it, just to save their own life. I would still like to see, I brought it up once before about Public Works and Grounds being in one building. I would like to have a discussion on that thing. And I'd like to have a tour. We talked about having a tour of the Marquette Light and Power building, so if anyone wants to go down there, he said 2, 3, or 4 people or something like that, and I'd be interested in going.
We could email dates to Randy and see if he wants to connect with Tom Carpenter, and whether we have a quorum or not, and we'll post it or not.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go see it, That's all I have.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Dave, are you good?
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Thinking.
Adjourn before I
I'll make a motion, we adjourn. He got it down.
John did it, so you can second it.
I'll second it.
And it's 8:33 PM. We are adjourned.